Medicine, I fell in love with, I'll be honest with you. And it probably started when I was orderly Bowen at Deaconess Hospital. I was an orderly for a short period of time. It was just before I got married, and I was about maybe 19 or so. And I loved CPR. It was, you know, back then the orderlies would do CPR and stuff when something would happen. And it was kind of, it was fascinating. That's also when I decided to maybe go back to school, and I really wanted biology. But at the same time, my wife, who was a nurse, I would read her nursing books about childhood development and about the placenta and everything. And it was like, wow, this is interesting. I didn't know anything about this. Interesting enough, I did not get in the first time I applied. There were back then there were 7 medical schools in Ohio. I applied to all 7 of them. I interviewed at all of them. The only one that I walked out on was Case Western, because during the interview, I think the instructor was trying to test me. You know, you went to Tri-C, you went to Cleveland State. No one in your family is a physician or even a nurse. Why are you applying here? This is Case Western. And it was 1982, and I got up and said, you know, you'll never stop being a something, and but someday I will be a doctor. You know, the one thing about medical school is you go into medical school making straight A's, and you'll never do it again. You know, it's like, oh my God, you struggle just to keep your head above water. But I was curious about emergency medicine, but the neat thing about that rotation is you didn't have call. Whenever I took medicine, whenever you took like cardiology or medicine, you were on call every 3rd night. So you were at the hospital every 3rd night, or you got called in every 3rd night. And with emergency medicine, it's shift work. So you go in, you work night shifts, you work days, you work weekends, whatever. But I could turn around to my kids and say, well, Dad will be at your baseball game. Dad will take you to your swimming lessons. You know, I'll be able to be more of a father. And that appealed to me. But then once I got involved with it, I would be staying over, you know, 2 hours past my shift because, oh, I loved it. I fell in love with it. I could not think of, seriously, I could not think of a better way to spend your life than to be an ER doc. But I gotta tell you, the human connection with being with patients that, like towards the end of my career, I would talk to families and talk to patients to see whether or not they wanted, you know, like someone would come in, they couldn't breathe. I'd intubate them, put them on a ventilator. Came to find out they're 82 years old and they have a history of lung cancer and they're been through chemotherapy and everything else. Well, I looked forward to talking to the family, talking to the patient, and then bringing the family in, taking that tube out and letting the patient pass while the family's there, praying with them, talking to them, being with them. And that's a powerful thing. One of my most powerful experiences as a physician was at Detroit in my residency, and I was taking my ICU rotation. And during that rotation, the doctor that headed us up, and he said, okay, close your books. He says, now I'm going to talk to you about the rural aspect of medicine. And he said, a good death is just as important as a good life. And you need to be the people that when a patient may be close to dying, you need to be the person for them and speak for them and talk to the family. He spent an hour, it was 2 hours he spent talking to us about how to talk with patients and communicate. Ironically, watching him in action, he would sit there and he would do what he felt the patient wanted. The International Medical Corps is a group of ER physicians and trauma surgeons. It's originated in Chicago, and it's docs from all over the world. When I was in Bosnia in '94 in Senica, I worked with doctors from Norway. I worked with doctors from Sweden, from England, and as well as from San Francisco and, New York and everything else. We're helping them develop an emergency medicine residency program for doctors that would like to work the ER. Back then, in Europe, there were no even ER doctors. In Germany there was, maybe in France, but not in some of the other countries. I did my residency in Detroit, and I felt pretty good on how to do my procedures, whether it be a stab wound or a gunshot wound or whatever it may be. So I thought I'd be able to handle it, Little did I know after we got there, it was a war. There was bombings that occurred at night, and when the bombings occurred at night, I would go down to the hospital and run down to the hospital, because then we'd start getting in wounded, is what would happen. We didn't get to move down here till late in '93. In early '93, we still lived up in Parma. We lived probably just a mile at the most from my mom's house. So the kids could go ride their bikes over after school and hang out with my mom and have the special relationship with her. A next door neighbor came over and had a really bad headache. And I started talking to him. And he said, well, I said, let me take your blood pressure. And I took his blood pressure, and it was off the wall. It was real high. And I said, are you on medicine for blood pressure? Oh yeah, I'm supposed to be, but I can't afford it. I don't have insurance. I don't have health insurance. And I'm like, my God, this is wrong, And then I'd go to the ER, and then I'd see, and it has nothing to do with race or anything, but I'd see people that were on public assistance and their whole bill's getting paid. But there's a guy next to him that works 2 jobs, but he can't, he's working 2 jobs, but he doesn't have insurance. So he's gonna have to pay the whole bill of what he's gonna have to do. And I thought, man, this isn't right. I should try to do this thing up in Parma. That's where I grew up. So I started the Parma Health Ministry up there. The biggest negative about the Parma Health Ministry was I wasn't connected to Parma Hospital like I am out here at Medina. So I couldn't talk to doctors as much and knew who to talk to, or nurses or whatever. We were like the 5th free clinic in Ohio. There weren't very many of them. And I went over to Lorraine, there was one in Lorraine, and I told them I was going to plagiarize everything they had. I said, I just want to try to start this thing and see what we could do. I went to Gary Holman and explained to him I'd like to try to start it. It makes sense, at first at face value, you look at it and you say, oh man, that means the hospital is going to have to help pay for lab tests or x-rays or that kind of thing. But because these people get and are provided with preventative care, then they don't come in with their heart attack, which costs a lot more money if you just look at the finances. It costs a lot more money to take care of their stroke after they've had the stroke. Gary hooked me up with Phil Brewer, hooked me up with John Cerso, hooked me up with a group of people, and we started the Medina Health Ministry down here. I'm so lucky because I go to, every now and then I'll go to a conference for the free clinics in Ohio, and I'll talk to other physicians, other medical directors and stuff. And we are so lucky here because I tell you right now, the people in Medina County are incredibly giving. And I don't mean that just from a financial point of view. I'm talking about giving their time, giving their expertise. I have no difficulty getting doctors or nurses to help us. I think there's a stigmatism sometimes when they hear the word free. The problem is that it was a catch-22. I kept on hearing people, oh, are you guys a cult, the ministry? Yes, no, we're not a cult. It had nothing to do with the religion, actually. It just has to do with people caring for the community. And again, I emphasize it and I talk a lot about it, but the people, one of the rarest things I've experienced down here is that the people in this community are incredibly generous and caring towards their fellow man. And that's special. That is very special.